Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting one. Hey!
We welcome you into Drive Time. After an awful night of Syracuse basketball last night, we are taking your phone calls all throughout the show this afternoon on Drive Time. 315-437-7644. Always the phone number to call. That was the phone number last night on postgame show, on the Burdick postgame show, and we went late night with you discussing all things Syracuse basketball. It was a tough one last night. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That was a very frustrating product to watch, and I'm sure a lot of you are frustrated and a lot of you are very upset. And I will give you the platform to vent today if you would like to do that. If you want to present some solutions, that would be highly encouraged. If you want to talk about why things are the way they are and your biggest issues and just be basically venting and I'll be your sounding board, we can do that as well. As phone lines are open throughout our entire show today, and we will talk all things Syracuse basketball after another tough one last night for the Orange. We are also live and running on the Q Sports Talk Twitch stream, where you can watch the shows and you can comment in and you can ask questions during the break and you can just have fun with us on the Q Sports Talk live chat. QSportsTalk.com is your friend there, and if you're ever on the go, if you're ever away from your radio dial, you can always get the show when it is live on QSportsTalk.com, or you can watch the on-demand version on QSportsTalk.com and on our YouTube page, which is Q Sports Talk. Tim Leonard with you on Drive Time, as always, 5 to 6 p.m. here on weeknights. And again, the phone lines and the phone number is 315-437-7644. We begin with our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive, as always. And, of course, we're going to talk Orange basketball. I have three big takeaways from the game last night and the chatter in response to the game last night, and basically the narratives that are around the issues with Autry and the issues with Syracuse basketball at large right now. So without further ado, let's get into the Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive.
Number one.
First takeaway I have from last night, and I want to come on here and I want to make this very clear to any of you that maybe were not listening or watching last night when we had the post-game show. What happened last night can't happen, and what is going on right now this season is unacceptable. Autry is not doing a good enough job as the Syracuse basketball head coach right now, period. He knows that, and in fact, he told us that this morning on Orange Nation. He was very clear and very accountable. For any of you that missed the conversation earlier today on Orange Nation, when we had Autry on, as we always do, Thursday at 1 p.m., here is what Coach Autry had to say about the noise that is coming in around his job and the program right now.
I hold myself accountable for everything. So again, whatever the noise is, I'm just as disappointed. I'm just as frustrated. I'm harder on myself than anybody else, radio shows or fans or anything. Like, I'm harder on myself than anybody. I accept this is responsibility. This comes with it, and I got to do a better job, and my staff has to do a better job, and the players have to do a better job. We all have to do a better job. But I hold myself accountable, and I understand the frustration.
So he is as frustrated or probably more frustrated than all of you. And it is killing him, I'm sure, right now that he is not getting more out of his basketball team. It is killing him. You can tell in game. He has that look on his face, that exasperated look sometimes when there is another silly turnover, another issue that popped up in previous games that continues to be a theme like the ball being ripped out of Donnie Freeman's hand last night, or Nathan George having, even though he only had one turnover, a really bad turnover in the second half, or just the lack of urgency, the lack of focus, as Coach Autry used that word a lot in his post-game press conference. How about missing the rebounds when it's 1 versus 4 on a free throw at the end of the game? Was Syracuse going to win the game if they got that rebound? Most likely not. There were a lot of other issues that we could discuss with the game, but that rebound needs to be gotten by Donnie Freeman. That can't happen. And there are a lot of things that are making the product more frustrating than it typically would be if it was just another 2-point loss like it was to Virginia Tech last night. I would have been fine if it was a 2-point loss and Syracuse maybe played better than we saw, or Virginia Tech came in here and shot the lights out, but I just didn't feel like Virginia Tech played that well last night necessarily. I mean, not to totally discredit them, maybe that's a little unfair, but it did feel like Virginia Tech struggled to shoot and wasn't as effective as they typically are. And Virginia Tech sort of tried to give the game away at the end, and Syracuse made it a little bit more interesting at the end, but in reality, the entire second half was a terrible product, and it was very, very frustrating to watch. So that is point number one. Coach Autry is not doing a good enough job, and if this team does not start playing way better basketball and turn this thing around miraculously and somehow get on the doorstep, at least, of the NCAA tournament, Coach Autry will not be the coach next year at Syracuse. He knows that. And frankly, I think the players obviously know that too, and I think that is part of the issue here. We'll get to Dro and Clay in just a second, but I do feel like the tightness that we're seeing on the court from the players, the just like no fun that the players seem to be having in these big moments, and you just don't see a lot of smiling faces right now around the Syracuse basketball program. And you get that, right? Because there's a lot of pressure on these kids. There's a lot of pressure on the program. There's a lot of pressure on the coaching staff. Coach Autry feels like he is consumed by this pressure. You take one look at him in the game and you can sense, it's kind of written all over his face, that he just doesn't understand why his team is still making some of the mistakes they're making. He's scratching his head as we're scratching our head at some of these awful turnovers. And I think that is all boiled up, and we have seen a team play with just a tightness that you can't play with in big games. And that is a hard thing to figure out. That's a hard thing to fix. The crowd is tight. The coaches are tight. The players are tight. And we're seeing a product that is not emblematic of how talented this roster is because of that. First phone call this afternoon comes from Clay, where we've got our guy, Dro. Dro, what is on your mind?
Hey, man, how you doing? So I got a lot to say, so cut me off if you have to.
All right.
So first up, to start off, is I find it funny because back in like 2012, 2013, Syracuse would be 34-3, and people wanted Jim Boeheim fired.
Sure.
Like, okay, whatever. Like, that's not... I laugh at all those back.
And they were critiquing rotations, and someone should have been playing more. Yeah, all of that. Sure.
Right. Crazy stuff. Fast forward. As much as Jim Boeheim was a good coach and he built this program, and people want to get mad at Autry, I have a problem with the student section booing and saying fire Autry. You don't do that. Show some class. The guy, whether he's coaching good or not, we know he's not doing a great job up there, Autry. We know he's struggling. We know he's in over his head. You don't boo the guy. You don't chant to get him fired. He's got a livelihood. He's got a family, and he's got a lot going on, okay?
Yeah.
We can go into mental health, all that other stuff, whatever. But they get paid a lot of money. They know what they're getting into. With that being said, and if, you want to sit there and blame someone for this whole mess we're in, it is Jim Boeheim. Okay, Jim Boeheim should have left. He left the program in a bad state of affairs. This is called what it is. And I'm a Boeheim supporter. You know I've been a Boeheim supporter. And I know that certain people like Brent Axe got in trouble for questioning some stuff back in the day. And I know Jim is going to have to Pat from Syracuse that had an article written about him and Boeheim having fights in the air. But, Jim put us in this position. So I think there's just so much going on that I do think if Boeheim would have left in 2018, like the plan was by Mark Coyle, who then bolted from Minnesota overnight, whatever to that, 2020 hindsight, Jim stepped in 2018. We had the perfect plan set for Mike Hoppus to take over, and this is where we are 8 years later now, okay? We used to make the Final Four once every 7 years, okay? Like, it was just normal. We're in the
he made, what, 5 Final Fours? And
Right, yeah. Exactly, right. So that was the norm. We're in the tournament every year. Some years we get upset by a Vermont or a Richmond. Other years we beat a Michigan State. But we were always in the mix. We're not even close to it. And Autry's got the talent. There's just a lot of pressure. It's not working. But, just remember, the guy's got a family. The guy's got a job to do. If he doesn't make the tournament, he's not going to be the head coach next year. We know that, okay? But I think people need to chill out, and show a little class and respect here, okay? Because at the end of the day, he did put on the uniform for 4 years and had a heck of a career over here as a player. So let's not forget that either. Look, it didn't work for Chris Mullen. It didn't work for Patrick Ewing. It's not working for Aiden Autry. And I do think that you want to see the fan base revolt. You can't hire an SU guy right now. There's no Jerry McNamara, no Mike Hopkins. No disrespect to them, because they get hired, they may get their house egged the way the Eagle coach got his house egged when they lost to the Bears. You know what I'm saying? You got to go outside the family at this point. There's no choice here. So I don't know what's going to happen for the rest of the season. We're probably going to win some games, and we're going to lose some more games too as well. I just sit there and say, hang tight. It is what it is. It's not going to be the season we want as fans. But let's show some class going forward here, and let's keep things in perspective, too, because at the end of the day, it's a basketball game. At the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? It does stink, though. As a fan, though, it's a good diversion to get out of the everyday life. Like, you know what? You get the stress of work, you get the stress of paying bills, but, hey, you have SU basketball, we're good. SU basketball is not going to really get it done this year, and that's just the reality of it. But I do think the next coach they got to hit a home run, and I think the university can't be cheap and skimp out on it like Jerry Jones does with the Dallas Cowboys, okay? You got to go out there, you got to spend money. I'm not saying Rick Pitino or Nate Oates, okay? But, go outside the box, get the St. Louis coach. Get the Iowa State coach. You got to get new blood in here. Jim Bam's got to keep his hands out of the thing. That's all I'm going to say. Keep up the good work. Go Orange all day.
All right, Dro and Clay. Poor Jim Boeheim catching some strays there. From a self-proclaimed Jim Boeheim defender, Dro and Clay, I agree on the point of booing and fire Autry. I understand that it was really, really tough to watch last night. And as I said, it's not good enough. It's not even close to anywhere good enough right now, what is happening with Syracuse basketball in the last handful of games. And we all know that this roster isn't unbelievable, but it's better than last year. And the conversation last year was it's only year 2 for Red, and he didn't have a roster that could have made the NCAA tournament. And I stand by that. He definitely should have gotten a third year, because that's just what everyone gives. The exception, I guess, is Louisville and Kenny Payne, and we need to stop comparing Syracuse to Louisville. There are a lot of you that make the point, Louisville and Villanova, look at them. Look at how quickly they turn this thing around. Well, first off, Louisville has way more resources than Syracuse. That's a reality. That's just the truth of the situation. You can't compare Syracuse to Louisville right now. Should Syracuse be in a better spot, NIL-wise, resource-wise? Maybe, but they're far off from where Louisville is based on what we know about the situation right now. So stop comparing them to Louisville necessarily. Also, that's one example of a success story in Louisville. Villanova is also a success story. And if you want to compare them to Villanova, that's more of an apt comparison in my mind. Kyle Neptune, I believe, won 17 games, 18 games, and 21 games. He was given 3 years. He was the assistant coach for a coach that brought the program to new heights in Jay Wright and was a legend. He took over for him. It didn't go well. He got 3 years. They moved on. Kevin Willard is the new coach. They're 15-4 this year. They're having a nice year. They're top 25 in the country on KenPom. That is an apt comparison to make, but also, let's also acknowledge that Kyle Neptune got 3 years at Villanova, and they were able to move off him then, and they were able to turn it around. So maybe that's what will happen to Syracuse, but I like Dro's point that they're not going to go out there and get Rick Pitino or Nate Oates. They're not going to get Jay Wright. They're not going to get Tony Bennett. There are 5 or 6 names that we can scratch off right now that get brought up way too much. You got to look around, guys. This is Syracuse, New York, and if you're reading between the lines, if you're looking at what's in front of you in terms of the resources and the conversation around college athletics right now and where Syracuse fits into that, let's be realistic about who they could go out and get if it does come to that. And I know a lot of you feel we don't even have to include the if right now. It does feel like it's trending towards there's going to be another head coach at Syracuse next year. It'll be a very fascinating conversation as to who they hire. And I'm with Dro. It doesn't feel like there's an obvious candidate right now in the family. It feels like they probably would need to go outside of the family if it comes to that. But I'm just scratching my head sometimes when I see the comparison to Louisville, because that's one success story. There are hundreds of examples of a coach that is fired and they bring in another coach and then he's there for 3 or 4 more years and then he's fired again. Georgetown's a fun one to pick on because they're basically our former rival at this point. Georgetown and Ed Cooley, I thought that was a great hire when it happened. A lot of you were very excited when Adrian Autry was hired. And if you were excited when Adrian Autry was hired, you got to give him at least 3 years. That's what everyone would have done, basically. Every school. That's what you have to do when you consider the finances. When you consider if they wanted to go out and hire another coach that's good, you don't want the reputation of we are not giving any leash. We're firing a coach after 2 years, even though we understand that our program is down and we have to get it back up, and it doesn't really happen overnight. It's a little bit easier for it to happen more quickly now with the transfer portal. You could make that case, but it still doesn't happen overnight. And Syracuse is not just drowning in money and choosing not to use it when it comes to the basketball team. Could you make a case that they need to enhance the budget a little bit to try and protect their most valued sport and the sport that has been the school's identity for going on 30, 40 years at this point, and the idea that they are a basketball school and you can't lose that, because if you lose that, then what are they? Yeah, you can make a case that they could dip into the pockets maybe a little bit more, but those pockets aren't endless. Money does not grow on trees, and we have to understand that when we're having the conversation about what could be next for Syracuse as their head coach if it is Adrian Autry's final season. Let's go to Pat in Syracuse before we hit our first break. Pat, what is on your mind?
Well, let's start talking about the financial piece, right?
Sure.
As far as I heard from when all the NIL started rolling out a couple years ago, there's a difference between where the funds come from for NIL and where the funds come from for salary. Is that the impression that you get? Because we need to start there.
Yeah, and I think revenue sharing now being in the picture should help Syracuse a little bit. And I think it probably did help them a little bit if I had to guess this season. And as everyone around the university has stated, they are in a better spot going into this year in terms of resources around the basketball program than they were last year. But I still think they're far off from Louisville and some of the top schools, obviously.
Well, let's shift to football for a second and then go right back to basketball. So with football, everybody knows that Fran Brown, as a head coach, one of the talents that he has is the funds that he got from New Jersey. Everybody knows that. It's not up for debate. It's not up for discussion. It's a fact that he has immense resources from New Jersey that are pipelining money into Syracuse University and into the athletic department, specifically football.
I don't know if everyone knows, but I know what you're saying. Well, I shouldn't cut you off. Just keep going.
Yeah. Well, everyone doesn't know, but anybody who knows would not refute it and debate it or reorganize it. So that's kind of what I'm saying. So part of the deal when you are interviewing for the head coach of a Power 4 team is the ability to generate revenue.
Sure.
Okay? Adrian Autry had no leadership experience in any, not just basketball. He had no leadership experience in any market. I could not imagine hiring somebody in any industry, in any market, without leadership experience to do what he needs to do. It was a Band-Aid. It was a Band-Aid. 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, you're going to find that diamond in the rough, and it's going to work. Typically, it's not going to work. And people can make stupid comparisons about Duke. Duke has its own identity and brand, so it makes it a lot easier and a lot less weight of the world on the coach because the talent's there, and it's going to be there, and Duke has its own brand. So I guess what I'm saying is when you put a Band-Aid on a situation and you hire somebody that is inept to do the job, and because he is inept to do the job, he has no leadership. He has no leadership experience. It's not like he did anything. I mean, Brad Stevens became a coach with no basketball experience in a leadership role, but he held high levels of, I think it was insurance or whatever the heck it was. And he had that track record, and he was just a smart, and you hit a home run with Brad Stevens. I mean, he went to Butler, went to the Celtics, and he just...
Let me chime in for a second, Pat.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with most of what you're saying here. The idea that you could benefit from someone who is a little bit more charismatic, a little bit better leader for generating money through NIL, I think is a valid point. And staying on that for a second, I think we're in agreement that if you're making the comparison to football, Fran Brown is probably in like the top 1% of that type of person. And that is great for this time period. I also would say that I think that you have to consider that it also should come from above Adrian Autry, people generating money for the program. And I do feel like sometimes it feels like they're not in a great position to succeed, the coaching staff, given the resources that they've been given. Now, could they be a little bit better? Could they be guided into those conversations of how they sit in their donor base and where they're at and all those things? Maybe. I don't know. It's hard for me to speculate too much on that because I'm not in those meetings and I'm not in the room. But I think a basketball coach should be still mostly a basketball coach. And if Adrian Autry was a phenomenal basketball mind and he wasn't great at generating money, then you could have a situation where you have a better AD maybe at generating money or better administration, and that could work. But it does feel like they need to be better at generating money right now into the program.
Yeah, and not only did they fail epically with him, because he has one skill that's above average as what you need as a coach, 1 out of 10, and that's recruiting. He's an above average recruiter, I don't think any other school was looking at him. I mean, Hopkins, we know, right? You remember when Hopkins was still at Syracuse, all the people that were all the places that were looking at him.
Oh, did we lose Pat?
I guess.
Oh, you're there.
No, I'm here. So I guess in closing, all I want to say is it's almost not his fault, but it's just funny how people like Paul. He said, "I trust Red and this and that." Why do you trust him? He has no track record. How can you trust that? I never understood how people just assume that people are making the right moves. I mean, people hire bad coaches all the time in any industry, in any sport, and that's what we did. Yeah. And it stinks. And it's not going to get better. And I don't know why you're speaking about if when it's obviously when. At this point in time, I don't see any way unless there's a major change with Wild Hack, and then the new guy comes in and says that's not what he's looking to do. But it's over. And it won't be good for the market. Thanks, Tim.
All right, there's Pat. We got to hit a break. We're well overdue. Long Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive. I'll react to more of Pat's thoughts and more on this conversation after this on Drive Time. Oh, good point, Philly. What leadership role did Fran have? Some people think Fran stinks, though. Dilemma Cuse, what's happening? I think the tough part, I'll get into it more. Pat, if you're in the chat, maybe we can continue the conversation in here. But Pat said at the end of his phone call, it's almost not his fault. I think that's the part that we can't overlook, right? Like, Red might not be the best coach ever, or I shouldn't even say might. He's clearly not an unbelievable basketball coach, or else they would be performing a whole lot better than they are right now. He also might not be the worst coach ever. It just might be a really bad situation that the next coach is going to need a boost from what the situation is right now for it to be possible for them to get back on track. So I think that's a little bit of the conversation that maybe we need to be having more, is instead of just all the blame on the coach, let's talk about how it got to this point and why are the players playing really tight, and what is true, and that could just come back to coaching. But it's not as if the next coach is walking in and he's going to be in a situation to hit the ground running unless changes are made, I would say, and unless there is improvement in generating revenue, that discussion that we were having. Yeah, Dro, Pat. Now we got Chris. So Vito, that would have been nice if we went Dro, Pat, Vito. That would have been the Holy Trinity. Yeah, how does Jim Boeheim, the reason that they were incredible, but also over... I mean, it's just hard to make the case that Jim Boeheim was better than maybe we were giving him credit for, but also he's the reason that they're in this position. Like, the idea that he overstayed his welcome, I don't even think that's really possible, considering what we're saying about how amazing the program was overall and how lucky we were to have him. Lukey Lou, that's a good question. I mean, I think Boeheim outkicked the coverage here in Syracuse for a while. Yeah, I think you're right about that, Philly. That's a part of coaching nowadays. But it's also a part of being an athletic director or being an associate athletic director or being high up in athletics as well. Oh, the YouTube chat. I will not neglect the YouTube chat. Speedy Claxton, after he took it to Cuse this year. We'll have plenty of time to break down names, guys. I don't know. Let's see who's out there when it gets to that point.
97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Welcome back into Drive Time. The afternoon after the awful Syracuse basketball game last night. Tough one, and we're reacting to it, and we're taking your phone calls, and we're letting you vent about it or do whatever you want when it comes to Syracuse basketball this afternoon. Phone lines are open throughout our show today. It's 315-437-7644. If you would like to chime in, that is 315-437-7644. Back to Chris, who is in Syracuse. He is next up on the phone line. So what's up, Chris?
How's it going? Eddie Autry, I mean, this team hasn't improved from game to game, so it's obviously he doesn't know how to coach or anything. He always blames the players in the post-game press runs. He very rarely blames himself for coaching.
He just took accountability. Did you hear the clip I played in the opening segment? I wouldn't say he always blames the players. I think that's a little unfair.
For the majority of the time, he does blame his players.
Did you hear the clip I played in the first segment?
No, but maybe I'll play it later. But regardless, I mean, the only person I can think of that's going to go down, like, I hate to say it, from an online player, maybe it's John Wallace. That's even though there's no coaching experience, but I feel like...
No, I don't think they're going for someone that hasn't coached in a very, very long time. You need a current head coach who has been successful. John Wallace and Eric Devendorf and Mello, these names aren't going to happen. So
no, I'm not like that, but if I had to choose, I'm saying if I had to put, like, I don't want to go that route, but, like...
well, it's not what we're talking about. We don't want to go that route, so why bring it up?
Well, I don't know. I mean... But I feel this university are going to go that route. I have a feeling they're going to go.
I don't think they will.
Well, you think Gene Beham is not going to influence the people on the school board or whatever, or the athletic director to keep on? He's the only reason why he's Beham wanted Autry, because he's the one who probably said, if I'm leaving, I want him to be a coach. He was got like an ultimatum. I don't like that. What Beham did was. This is not about friendship. This is about a business. That's where he goes wrong. That's where he feel like he fails. He fell in life. And you can say one time because Carmelo, but he goes to show. I don't like the way how if you can say air the ball like Beham does. Like they're not supposed to get these players to grow up as men in the real world. They're not, and they're failing them as being a mentor.
All right, Chris, it's a little tough to hear everything you're saying at the end there. And I think his overall point is obviously, I know Chris, since he's called in from the post-game show the first time I talked to him, I know he's very upset with Coach Autry, and I understand that. And I think that the conversation of Syracuse's next head coach is not going to include someone that is a former player or Carmelo Anthony. That's not the route they're going to go here. So that's another narrative or chatter point that I would just like to dismiss right now, is the idea that I've already dismissed a couple here. The idea that Syracuse is Louisville and they can just immediately snap their fingers and get a great coach and have unlimited resources basically and turn this thing around instantly. I don't know about that. The idea that a lot of other ADs around the country or schools would have already fired Red, I'd like to dismiss that. There are plenty of narratives to dismiss here. I think most of you understand that the next head coach is probably going to be someone who is maybe a mid-major coach or maybe someone that is at a low-power conference level. And again, I think we'll have plenty of time. We're going to have shows all throughout the summer here to discuss a potential next head coach. I also feel like, well, it's not ignorant to already be talking about that, but let's just let the season play out. Let's just let the season happen here. Obviously, right now, it feels like their only way of making the NCAA tournament, for the most part, is winning the ACC tournament. It feels like that's where this is trending. And that would probably require them losing a couple more games to get to that point mathematically, basically. But it clearly feels like that is where this is trending, which is how it felt for NC State. And they won the ACC tournament, and they went to the Final Four, and they ended up keeping their head coach. There's no rush to fire Adrian Autry. Adrian Autry is not going to get fired tomorrow. He's not going to get fired this week. He's not going to get fired next week. No one would do that across college basketball. So that's another thing I'd like to dismiss right now. The idea that he should be fired and they should make a statement and they should fire him right now so that they can get a jump start on the search. That's not necessary. If it becomes obvious in February that they're going to go a different route, you can start that searching process. You can start vetting people if you like. There's a reason that college basketball coaches last through the season. The ACC tournament, the conference tournaments have a say in that, and you don't want to fire the coach and not really have someone else that is a good assistant to fill in for the remaining games. It's not like they have a top assistant that they could go to and it would make this season better and it would salvage the season. That's not how I feel right now. So that conversation needs to be nixed completely. If they're going to fire Adrian Autry, it's probably going to come at the end of the season, and there's no rush to do it. The portal will open. They'll be ready for it if it comes to that. High school recruiting, there's no timeline there. This isn't football. So no one really fires their coach on January 22nd. I can't remember anyone firing a coach in college basketball unless it was basically with cause or they did something off the court or away from basketball on January 22nd. Syracuse is not going to be the first school to do that. That would be an all-time stunner. If of all the schools to do that, it would be Syracuse. Let's go back to the phone lines real quick. We got Dave in Syracuse, and then we'll get to our next break. Hey, Dave.
Hey, I was just going to say the same thing you were talking about. I think they need to fire Autry mid-season where we still have a winning record. You know, I mean...
Why does that matter, Dave? And would it get better if they fired him, in your eyes? Would that salvage the season?
I think it would because we have talent to be a good team.
Who's the assistant coach that becomes the head coach then? The interim head coach?
Alan Griffin.
Alan Griffin becomes the head coach, and that would make the team better, you think?
I think so. You got to give it a try. You got to give it a try at least.
Why, though? I mean, if you really feel that Alan Griffin would make a marketable difference, I think that's just a big difference in opinion on us, and I don't have anything against Alan Griffin. I think he's a better assistant than probably the average fan gives him credit for, and I think he's a better basketball mind than probably the average fan gives him credit for. But there's no assistant that checks a box of being a head coach somewhere else and would completely change things here. So, again, there's no reason to fire him right now. No school would do that right now.
I mean, we can still make the tournament. It's going to be hard. They have talent. That's the thing. That's the thing that's frustrating with this team. They have the talent. They didn't get blown out. They had a chance to win yesterday. They just couldn't make the damn plays.
If Alan Griffin is some unbelievable assistant coach and he's on the bench every game, why are they struggling this much? Why would he make a marketable difference from what is happening right now with Adrian Autry as the head coach?
I honestly can't. I don't know. I mean, I think it's also chemistry too with this team. They also don't have good chemistry. But I mean, they have the talent. They have the talent. That's what's mind-boggling and frustrating. They have the talent to be a good team.
All right, Dave, we got to let you go because we got to get a break in, and we've got some more callers that are calling in right now at 315-437-7644. We're back after this on Drive Time.
This is...
I mean, do you guys agree with me there? Are we seeing something from the assistant coaches that makes you think that would be the cure here? Yeah, I just try to give simple questions, but, you know. All of you guys just screaming for me to hang up on people. Yeah, Syracuse. If it's a different voice, maybe you can make that case. I mean, I don't know. It's just it requires them running the table basically at this point. Like, if you really felt like they were fractured locker room wise and they weren't playing for Red and maybe they were 1 or 2 games away from getting back in the thick of it, and it was, I mean, that's just not, there's no scenario really. Honestly, you should have said Dan Engelstad if you were picking the best assistant, because at least he has been a head coach elsewhere. And I may have said no assistant has been a head coach elsewhere, and that's kind of that's not true when you consider Engelstad. But I stand by my point that I don't think if they have some genius assistant that would be completely changing things, I don't know why they would be struggling this much overall. Oh, I got to stay on time tonight. We got Crunch Weekly. Tough show to stay on time. Lemoyne head coach, I think they can do better than that. Oh, you're saying like for an interim? Yeah, you can't really do that either. Lemoyne's got a contract with him. I mean, that's not possible. If that's what you mean. Theo Cuse, I think that's fair. I mean, I think you can make a case like, you know, J.J. Starling. I don't know how much he's making, but he's making good money, I'm sure. And I think you can make a case that the team kind of checked out a little bit last night, or that's changed things a good deal. But I think that's true for a lot of teams. So,
Radio Syracuse.
All right, we are back on Drive Time, continuing to go right to the phone lines here and get your thoughts on Syracuse basketball. If you'd like to call in, it's 315-437-7644. Always the phone number to call here on Drive Time. Let's go right back to the lines where we've got Lou in Utica, who is next up on the phone lines. Lou, you are on Drive Time.
Yeah, real interesting conversations. I just want to make a couple comments and I'll let you go.
All right.
I really enjoyed the show tonight. The gentleman that was doing the play-by-play last night, the former basketball player or retired,
the color guy or Randolph Childress?
Yeah, Childress. Yeah, you know, I watched him. He was a hell of a player in college.
Yeah.
But anyways, he said, we got all the talent in the world. Guys are standing around. I mean, what is with the coach, the assistant coaches? Why can't they get these guys to play together? I don't understand that. Secondly, it's not up to us as fans to say who we want from the Syracuse family. I don't see anybody in the Syracuse family able to come in and take this team over. It's up to the athletic director at the end of the season to take a look and see who's available. Maybe a young guy like a Shaka Smart or somebody, you know, maybe they could get somebody that has been retired and wants to get back into basketball. But they got to do it quick in order to save the portal. One last thing, I think Alex Klein did a great job in bringing in some players this year. Thank you for taking my call.
All right, good call from Lou in Utica. It seems like if one coach goes, then all the coaches are going to go. I don't know what that would mean for Alex Klein, and I struggle to give Alex Klein too much credit because I think the biggest thing is they had more money this year. And I think Red deserves some credit, too, as a recruiter, which a lot of you have brought up the point that Red is a good recruiter. So I like to hear that we're at least acknowledging that is an aspect of coaching, and that is something that he is good at. And we'll see what comes for Adrian Autry if he is not the head coach at Syracuse going into next year. but maybe he could end up on a staff as an assistant, an NBA staff, something like that. He's got a very good skill set to be an assistant coach, I think, and I don't want all of us to come to the conclusion now that Adrian Autry is a bad basketball mind altogether. I think this was a tough situation, and I think Lou had some good points there. Shaka Smart being the next head coach would not be my first pick, though, considering he is struggling pretty mightily this year at Marquette. I think overall he's a pretty good coach, but I don't know if I would go to Shaka Smart. Let's go to George in Syracuse, though. He's next up on the phone lines.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, George. How are you?
Pretty good. So, one question. Why didn't Soiree play last night?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I imagine he just didn't make the rotation considering Donnie Freeman is back in the mix, and I don't think that Soiree's 10 minutes per game would have changed the outcome necessarily, but he has played in every game so far this year, I believe, and he didn't play last night, so I thought of that, and I don't know if there's anything more than he just didn't really crack the rotation because of what Virginia Tech had to offer.
I disagree because when Kyle was out, and I love Kyle, Soiree could have filled the lane on defense, and they had so many freaking drives right to the basket undefended. He could have stopped them. And when Freeman playing the 5, he's out of position. Freeman's a great 4. I think you handicap him by putting him in the 5. So you have Soiree at the 5. Then I think Freeman can do a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, I just don't know if Soiree, when he's out there, has shown enough to really get too upset if he's not playing in the game, you know?
Yeah. I just think, based on the flow of the game, I would have used him. As far as on Autry, I don't want him to fail because if he fails, they're starting over again. But if they do start over again, they got to go outside SU, find some young coach like in the MAC or something like that who's really, really tearing it up and bring him in. There's got to be somebody who's up and coming.
I like that approach, too. Good call from George in Syracuse. It was a little interesting that Akir Soiree didn't play last night. It seemed like they were going to a different lineup where they used Kings at the 2, they used Betsy at the 3, they used Freeman at the 5. So it was as if they were going small ball in a way with Freeman at the 5, but they also went bigger at the 2 and 3. They were trying some different things, and a lot of you have been on here and called in and said that Adrian Autry needs to play with the lineups more and needs to mix some things up, and it did feel like he did a little bit more of that last night, including playing Bryce Zephyr, and then, as we talked about in the postgame show last night, they didn't go back to Bryce Zephyr. We've got someone else calling in. We will get to them after our final break here when we wrap up the show next, and your phone call could be worked in as well at 315-437-7644. You're listening to Drive Time.
We're back for our second year.
Bowling Ball Red answered that question on Orange Nation. Not sure if you were listening, but his answer, whether you agree with it or not, I'll tell you his answer. It was that he believed Virginia Tech is a good shooting team, and a big part of their game plan was to prevent them from making threes. And he was worried, considering that they were doing a good job stopping them from making threes, is if they went to zone, then that would be something that would flip and they would be better offensively. And they were happy that they were shutting down them from beyond the arc for the most part. He also, I think he brought up a point too about offensive rebounds and how, you know what it was? He said they had a lot of good passing bigs. And he felt like if they went in zone on them, they would have been ready for it, and they would have had the proper personnel in terms of passing bigs to pass it around the zone, and it would just been a bad team to zone against, basically. I'm going right to Polly's for dinner. No, thanks. Yeah, you can watch back the interview. Bowling Ball. It's on our YouTube page. Well, Philly, that's a data point. That's interesting. that didn't run parallel with what Coach Autry was thinking or his theory on it. Not to put words in his mouth. I'm sure he had that data and everything in front of him when he was weighing his options, but I mean, they are a good three-point shooting team, so I kind of understand his logic there. I don't think that would have been a talking point, really, if they hadn't zoned in the previous games. But honestly, the games that they have zoned is when they were really struggling on defense or they were struggling to some extent, and he just wanted to switch it up. And I know he's a fan of that. It's been pretty evident. And I don't know if defense was really the problem last night, so he probably just didn't feel the desire to switch it up. Although guarding Hammond was a problem, and he kept getting in the lane, so you can make that point. Final segment this afternoon on Drive Time, and we've got one more caller to get to. You'll have Crunch Weekly coming up in just a little bit, live from Tully's on the Boulevard. Lucas Vivalli and some of the Crunch players out at Tully's Thursday nights throughout the season. Not every Thursday night, but they will be out there tonight, so you have that to look forward to on the radio side of things. And we will be back tomorrow for Orange Nation and Drive Time on both the radio and QSportsTalk.com. Let's go to Nick in Las Vegas, a fitting last caller for us. We usually hear from Nick throughout the week, and we usually hear from Nick on football, but I'm sure he's got some thoughts, like all of you, on men's basketball right now. What's up, Nick?
What's up, Tim? Yes, this is all basketball. And I'll be the first to say that I've been a big Red supporter, just because I think you need to give him time, like you said, a 3-year minimum. But obviously the writing's on the wall, right? He's not getting the job done. So obviously you have to be realistic about things. But that being said, Alan Griffin couldn't even win a game in the TBT, let alone coach a college basketball team. Second of all, the players have accountability as well. I mean, you can't coach Donnie rebounding that ball at the end of the game last night, right? Like, the turnovers are not, I mean, Red's not shooting foul shots. Red's not turning the ball over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing that I've heard a lot over the last 24 hours is the complaint that he was banging on the table and that he dropped an F-bomb in the press conference. And to me, that shows he's got passion. I appreciate that. Like, it's frustrating him as well. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I think
to me that showed he's at a loss of, gosh, why does this keep happening? I don't understand it. I keep telling them, don't make these silly mistakes. Don't, shoot yourselves in the foot, basically, and they're doing that, I'm sure, is kind of what we're seeing from him. I mean, how could you not be frustrated? We're all frustrated watching it, and like I said earlier, he is scratching his head at some of the things that are making us scratch our head, I'm sure, on the basketball court as well.
I agree totally, and I think it's unfair that the fan base gets on him for not coaching or not doing a good enough job, but when you show frustration, they get on him for that as well, right? It's like a lose.
That's what happens when you're losing. I mean, he came on Orange Nation today, and he took accountability for it, but people still are claiming that he's not. He could say anything right now, and everyone would be very frustrated because they are a losing basketball team. Well, not totally a losing basketball team, but you get my point. They're not playing good enough right now, and he understands that. So no matter what he would be showing action-wise on the sideline or what he'd be saying, there would be overwhelming frustration from the fan base right now.
I agree totally. But I'm going to leave you with two quick things.
Yeah.
One, a possible replacement would be the coach from Colgate. I think he does a
Matt
good
Langle.
job. Yep. That would be a good one to look at. And the second thing is, I just want to get your opinion, because there's so much turmoil and uncertainty in the administration between the chancellor and who knows when Wildhack is retiring. I just want to know what you think. Does that have any effect on the decision being made?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid point. Whether Wildhack is here next year or not, he's probably going to be here through June, and I would imagine he would have some decision in Adrian Autry. Would he have decision in who would be the next head coach if he's not here next year? I don't know. I mean, it's a valid thing to bring up. and I think it's something that we should be monitoring is, okay, the chancellor left. Does that mean John Wildhack's going to leave? We'll see. But I think regardless, the next decision or the decision on who is the next head coach will come down to a lot of people, the board of trustees. And I think there will be a lot of different conversations on that. And that decision will still happen probably at the same time, whether John Wildhack is the athletic director next year, whether Kent Syverud would have been here next year or not, I'd say.
That's fair. I just don't know if those people, the board of trustees, and I hate to say it, but behind Carmelo, to an extent, I think they have a say in when he goes too, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're having conversations, but that's kind of all the time we have, Nick. We got to get off the air, but I appreciate you calling in. Yeah. All right, that is Nick in Las Vegas. We will get you to Crunch Weekly on the other side. Want to make sure I am on time for that, and you will have that to look forward to on the other side of things. We'll be back tomorrow for Orange Nation, 12 to 2, and Drive Time from 5 to 6 p.m. Thanks to Kyle for producing. As always, thanks to all of you in the Q Sports Talk chat. And don't forget, you can listen to the show in podcast form as well. We will talk to you next time on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.